son is racing.
Welcome, race fans, to another episode of the Rubbin' is Racing Daily Fantasy NASCAR Show. This week, we are in Sparta, Kentucky for 267 laps on this 1.5-mile track where, kids, guess what? We have a repave and it's been cleaned by thunderstorms, so this race should be interesting. And if the truck race was any indication, it will be interesting. Kyle Larson failed to make it through inspection for the fourth time this season. So, the season point leader for the Monster Energy Cup Series will start from the rear of the field. Rowdy is sitting on the pole after crushing the track record. Oh, and Matt Kenseth announced that he won't have a ride with JGR next year. Tonight, we will go racing at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on NBC Sports Network. The lap segments will be at 80, 160, and then all the way to the finish. As you guys can tell, I'm without my co-host this week. Hopefully, I'll give you all the information you need this week, and we'll win some money. With that said, it's time to burn some rubber. See, now, normally I would go to Liehr here, but I'll go ahead and do the honors. Burning rubber, baby, Sparta style. All right, guys, before we get into the burning rubber picks, the first one we need to talk about is Kyle Larson at 10,000. He should be owned 100%, and he's starting from the rear of the field. I feel like we've seen this movie before, as he's been almost guaranteed a must-play, except for whether or not there was a wreck or some sort of technical malfunction when he starts from the rear. He can't lose you points. I know he's expensive, but if you're not starting your lineups off with Larson this weekend, odds are you're doing something wrong. But now it's time to get into the burning rubber picks. My first pick should surprise nobody. As you know, I've been on this guy all season, but Rowdy, he's not in the M&M's car, he's in the Snickers car, and it is super sweet this week. He's 10,200, he has 2 wins here. 50% of the time at this track, he leads over 100 laps, which makes him the dominator that you will need to have on your fantasy lineup if he does such a thing. Including twice, he's sat on the pole and went from a 1-1 win. He was also the fastest car in 10 laps averages in practice 1. This very well may be the week Rowdy gets into the win column and stops JGR's 2017 drought. Just a heads up here, his Toyota teammates are also really fast. Truex, Hamlin, Kenseth all look just lightning fast. Even the rookies both look fast. I just have no problem if you want to super load on JGR this week. My next pick to burn some rubber, since I'm solo, guys, you just have to listen to me, is that of Brad Keselowski. Kez is 10,100 this week, but he has 3 wins, being the most dominant car at Kentucky. He also has a 1-1 and a 2nd-1, as well as an 8th to 1st. He usually leads about 70 laps here, so he's not known to be quite the dominant racer, Rowdy, but he basically leads 70 lap years every race. Kez starts 10th, but my concern here is that this car, and as well as the rest of the field, doesn't seem to have the speed that the Toyotas do. However, Kez seems to always get it done here at Kentucky and makes for a solid place differential / dominator, as you're going to get the opportunity to have 10 place differential points if you can go 10th to 1st. That pretty much wraps up my burning rubber picks, guys. These two guys, Kez and Kyle, have 5 of the last 6 wins at this track. It's just a no-brainer to me that one of those 2 guys should dominate this track, especially as fast as both of them look. And remember, Kez was also 3rd fastest in practice 2 and 10 lap averages. So if you're looking, both of them were quick on the 10 lap average board. That wraps up the burning rubber segment, guys. I'm just by myself. I don't have a lot of arguments to give, except for the fact, like I said, I'm kind of worried that they don't have the speed of the Toyotas. But other than that, if you can tell, I'm a little Toyota partial this week for what we've seen on them at the track. Now it's time to get some value, as you're going to need to save money, especially if you're going to try to roster Rowdy and or Kez, as they're both super expensive. My first value pick for you this week is Ryan Newman at 7,300. The Rocket has had to swap engines and will start from the rear of the field, which would make him a must-play. But then, for some reason, he went out and decided to qualify 30th so he could choose a pit stall 10 spots better. I'm still confused. Anyways, that has cost us a potential 10-point place differential points, but I still think he finishes way better than 30th, so I'm all about the Rocket as a play here at Kentucky this weekend. The next value play I have for you is Landon Castle at 5,500. He is starting 35th and should finish anywhere from 5 to 10 spots better than that. If we can get to that 25th place point, he should become a great value play and net you in that range that you're looking for from super value plays of the 35 to 45 points. Now, every spot he can get better than that 25th makes him even more of a value play, and you're asking for a whole lot out of that front row motorsports car to finish higher than 25th, but I think 25th is a realistic possibility, and at 5,500, that's a play you're going to want to make. Kids, that wraps up the value. You know there's a lot of other value plays out there, but I don't seem to like hardly any of them as much as I like Landon Castle being priced where he is and starting where he is. The person I'm going to send to the garage this week is Jamie McMurray. This is an overqualification, plain and simple. This season, he only has 2 finishes better than his starting position of 4th, and both of those were at restrictor plate tracks at Daytona, the first Daytona race, and at Talladega. That's simply a no thank you for me. Look, I love what Jamie Mack's been doing, and he is part of the Chip Got Nasty racing team that's amazing. That should tell you that Larson has a car that's capable of running in the top 5 from his starting position. However, Jamie Mack is most likely not going to go anywhere but back. That creates problems for fantasy, and for daily fantasy purposes, we don't want to play a guy like Jamie Mack. That's just, I'm really concerned that there's no ability for him to gain any points. He shouldn't be a dominator here anyway. And there are so many other cars and drivers that I just have being a better play than Jamie Mack this week. It's an easy fade for me, and I'm sure the guys would agree if they're here. Now, the guys should be here next week, and we should have full group, everybody back around the table, giving you all the picks. So if for some reason my picks are missing something, it's because I didn't have my boys on the wings helping out and rounding out my opinions this week. But with that said, it's time to go into the lineup building segment, which is going to be uniquely different than normal, as it's just me. So maybe this will help us and get us off our little schneid of having teams be kind of dumpster fires. We are putting this in the 50K Beast, the big boy. It's $8 to get in, a $300,000 prize pool, and it pays $50K to the top spot, which we're going to need to be really lucky to get, but hopefully we can take it down. All right, so with that said, where I'm looking to start my lineups this week is taking an approach of, do I have Rowdy dominating this race? And if I do, I'm just auto-plugging him. If I don't, and that's the race vision I'm drawing up, then I would fade him sitting on the pole. However, I think fading Rowdy is risky, even with the stage breakdowns. I think it's a good chance he leads the first segment completely, and there's even a better chance that he does more than that based on his track history here, especially when he's sitting on the pole. I'm going to go ahead and put together a Rowdy lineup for you guys and show you how I would go ahead and do that. So we're going to go first with Rowdy. So after we put Rowdy on the lineup, you're down to 7,960. Now, guys, look, we saw what took down the tournaments last week, which was just an amalgamation of value, the guy that won had like $5,000 left on the board. Welcome to restrictor plates where anything can happen, and basically everything did happen last week. Now, that could still happen here, but it's a lot less likely as this is not a restrictor plate track. So playing all the punt guys and leaving a ton of salary on the board is most likely not going to be the scenario that leads you to fantasy money this week. You're going to need a dominator at this track, and there's enough laps where a dominator comes into play. I think Rowdy's the best dominator there. If you're wanting to split domination, you could look to Rowdy and Keselowski. But guys, since I have Rowdy dominating this race, and I already told you that I believe that Larson is a must-own, starting from the rear of the field, we'll go ahead and throw both those guys on this lineup. That leaves us with 7,450 remaining. Now, guys, this is where it gets interesting to me because I automatically want to reach down here and grab Newman starting 30th, and that bumps us back up to the 7,500 range. And if you're noticing, that puts you in the range with like Austin Dillon, Casey Kane. You can spend up a little bit and get Kurt Busch, or a junior. I think junior's way overqualified, and we've talked about the junior problems over and over again. But just in case you really wanted to reach up and roster junior, you can do it. What I'm kind of leaning towards here this week is I'm sort of feeling that the RCR cars are all starting in positions that I really like, and they're starting back. So Austin Dillon plays an interesting one for me. Not Stenhouse, sorry, I double clicked there. The Ty Dillon in the RCR affiliated car is also an interesting play. You can also then put Menard on the lineup if you wanted to at 6,800 and leave salary on the board, or you could reach up to somebody that's really good at this track traditionally, which is Casey Kane. Qualified 23rd, so that might be a nice place differential play as well. Basically, you have your choice from Earnhardt on down if you go Busch, Larson, Newman, Dillon, Dillon. And for the purposes of this lineup, I think I'm going to do that and then throw in Casey Kane in that number 5 Mountain Dew car. It looks pretty sweet. You know, guys, I really like this lineup. I'm not sure if you're going to need more than one Dominator this week. That's the only thing that I've been battling back and forth. If you're going to need more than one Dominator, and we've seen that with the stage breakups, that's more than likely the case, you might want to squeeze another stud on the lineup, which means you're going to have to punt one of these guys, like Casey Kane, off the lineup, spin up, and then spin down. It's whether or not you want to try to do the one Dominator strategy or the multi-Dominator strategy this week. And because of the Larson predicament, unless you're going to try to design a fate of Larson who can not go negative and not score you any negative points and possibly be the best scorer. I mean, guys, if that's a top 10 car, he's going to outscore the winner even with the domination. That's how much he's going to gain on place differential. So, guys, that lineup is Rowdy, Larson, Newman, Dillon, and Kane. And remember, guys, we're not trying to give you a lineup. This show's free. We do it because of our love of NASCAR. The purpose of putting together this lineup is to try to show you guys the proper thought process that we go about creating lineups. And especially without the guys around me, maybe my thought process is correct this week. Maybe my thought process is a dumpster fire. And maybe we needed Liehr or A-Dub to counteract where my head is and where my race vision is. That's important to understand in daily fantasy sports. And you know what? This lineup could win 50K, and it also could be the worst lineup I've put together all season. That's the joy of fantasy NASCAR and sort of the tunnel vision we get as fantasy players when we decide to look at certain players on certain races and analyze certain parts of the data. It's human bias, and it's going to be natural. But guys, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Hopefully that lineup takes down 50K for me. That would be super sweet, especially on the week that I'm stuck doing the show by myself while everybody else is on vacation. Anyways, you guys, thanks for tuning in. Hope you found the Rubbin' His Racing show informative, even though it was just a solo show. Love you all for tuning in. Thanks again. Let's win some money this week. And boys, come back. I need your help. Later, everybody.